It should be the right type.
Thank you.
That's great. I think that's what she told me. If I heard
To
her
make a
correctly.
bracha, I think we said this, to make a bracha on neiros that don't have a filament,
Right.
it's a chiddush. There are people who say you could make a bracha, but it's better to just have that. We were disappointed in the hotel that they had the licht. My wife lit, but they had the licht in a different room, not where you sleep and not where you eat. So we turned on a light in the room, but this was in. Any of you familiar with Yirmiyahu 33? It's a very, very frum, beautiful hotel in Yerushalayim. It's right near Center One. You know where Center One, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a pretty new hotel. It's a few years old. And it's set up, that's why I was a little surprised about that, and I would want them to change it. For next time I make a Shabbaton there, I'm going to have the licht in the room. But the
I would
rooms...
think it's not such a big deal. It's not like...
Shouldn't be such a big deal. Especially Shabbaton where there are 60 boys and 4 women. We should be able to find room for the... but also they have... Like you could turn on a light in the room and not have to worry about a light being on in the room because the lights over the bed, you know, in hotels they have like these lamps over the beds. They're Shabbos lights.
Oh,
Isn't that smart?
It's like the Shabbos bowl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
That's
cool.
amazing, yeah. They also have a Negelwasser sink in the room. It's very nice. It's like, reminds me many years ago, a friend of mine was becoming a architect. When he was in school, he did for like his thesis, he did the architecture of a Jewish home. And you remember this? Yeah, and it was very, very interesting. You know, he did the regular things you would expect, you know, Pesach kitchen, you know, things like that. But he also had like Negelwasser sinks in the bedrooms. And he had the Sfarim. The house had beams that held it up, like every house has. And the Sfarim were around the beams to show that the foundation of a house is very, very interesting. He took Yiddishkeit and he designed a home that's Yiddishkeit. So it was like the values of Yiddishkeit expressed in a home. Very, very interesting. But I felt like that a little bit in the hotel. Like, is that... Okay, we're in the middle of the halachas of Kiddush. I think the last thing that we spoke about was... we talked about, in terms of eating before Kiddush, that we talked about the fact that one is not allowed to eat before Kiddush or drink water, even though before Havdalah it is permitted to drink water. But for 2 things we said one could be lenient. One is if someone has to swallow pills, of course, that are permitted on Shabbos. If those pills are permitted on Shabbos, you could swallow with water. You don't make a bracha on that water. And the second is children that are hungry. Children that are hungry, even if they're higia lechenuch, as long as they're not bar or bas mitzvah, they are allowed to eat. There's no din of chinuch to starve our children.
I don't know if you discussed this. Is it before davening or after davening? Does it matter?
No, we're talking about Friday night.
Oh, Friday night.
Friday night, yeah, Friday night. Okay, we also mentioned that we should hurry to make Kiddush. Kiddush should happen immediately. You know, people should come home from shul and Yemaher lekadish v'lechol miyad. You should do Kiddush. We have, in our family, I come home very late from davening. I'm usually the last one to leave shul. But we do start, you know, thanks to the fact that I have to learn with the boys right after the meal. And by the time I get home, it's almost time to get back to shul. So a lot of times, especially in the winter, I walk into the house already singing Shalom Aleichem. Like, I come in, but there's something nice about that lahalacha to get started to make Kiddush right away. If the whole family is not hungry, like it could happen like in last year's Purim, which was Erev Shabbos, that by the time Kiddush comes Friday night, nobody's ready to eat. So in order to increase the Einig Shabbos of the family, you could wait a little bit if everyone's not hungry. But just if one person's not hungry, then they should eat anyway. Okay, so now let's talk about covering the chalas. It's not so clear in the Paiskim if you absolutely have to have the chalas on the table by Kiddush. Some people hold that the halacha of covering the chalas is if they're on the table by Kiddush, and some people say no, the idea is that there should be covered chalas there. So each family could do whatever their minhag is. There's what to rely on both sides. Okay. We have very deep cheshbonos sometimes, like the challah still needs to defrost, or it's getting too hot. There are sometimes very alpi Kabbalah reasons why you would choose one way or the other. Anyway, but the idea of the covering is like this: the true, the minig, the way it's described in Shulchan Aruch is that the challahs should have a covering beneath them and on top of them. And there are really, I've always told you, and when we went through these halachas last time, I told you that there are 2 reasons for this, but the truth is there are 3 reasons, okay, that are brought down. There's the 2 main reasons that we teach, but there is also a 3rd reason that's good to know. The 2 reasons are, one is the way we teach it to children is that we don't want the bread to be embarrassed that we're choosing to make Kiddush on the wine first. Now, obviously, our bread doesn't need therapy. It doesn't have feelings, but the point is, many times Chazal spoke in that way to bring out the sharpness of the point, that it's appropriate to, in reality, it would be appropriate to eat the challah first. Why?
Someone comes first.
Why? Because that's not the bracha, the pasuk. Right. Eretz chita sa'ira gefen. So because chita and sa'ira come before gefen, that's why the seder is that there's precedence over chita and sa'ira over gefen. Now, some people think because of that, maybe it doesn't apply if you have like spelt challah or what other kinds? Oat challah. Maybe it wouldn't apply because that's after gefen. So you wouldn't have to cover it because of course you're going to do the gefen first. But that is not correct. The poskim say that all the other types of grain that are mentioned later are in the category of chita or sa'ira. So they mention the different types afterwards, but they are all chita or sa'ira types of grain. Okay? Okay, so that's the reason why it would have been appropriate to make the bracha on challah first, but Chazal wanted us to be mekayim the mitzvah d'oraisa of Kiddush, to be mekadesh al hayayin. There's a chashivas of wine, to be mekadesh al hayayin, and therefore we do make Kiddush on wine first, but we cover the challah out of respect for that pasuk. So we cover the challah. That's one reason.
It's just the one cover, not the bottom, right?
That would l'chayra only be one cover. Yeah, as we'll see, the different things that we do reflect different reasons.
Does the cutting board count?
Yeah, the tablecloth even counts. Yeah. The other reason that's brought is, and here's where the bottom cover comes, is to be zecher leman. Our chalas on Shabbos are zecher leman. That's why we have 2 of them, because on Erev Shabbos there was a double portion. So to remember that the Shabbos was the double portion of Erev Shabbos, we have lechem mishnah by each, 2 lechems by each meal, and because the man, the way that pasuk describes in Parshas B'Shalach, the man falling, is that there was dew, there was tal that fell, and then the man fell on top of it, and then there was a layer of tal that fell on top of that. So that's the tzura that we set up our chalas, that we have a cover underneath it, we have the chalas, and then we have a cover on top. There is a 3rd reason that's brought. It's brought in the Rishonim, but it's really even from before that. There's a sefer of Braisas, which is like from the Tanaim, called She'iltais. It's brought in the She'iltais, and the She'iltais said that there's an idea of covering the chalas. It's very, very, very interesting, and I don't think it has really halachic ramifications for us, but it's a fascinating reason to show that this is for Shabbos. The idea is that we're trying to balance out 2 things. Like, you remember when we talked about lighting neiros, we said that if you light neiros and you're not makabel Shabbos right away, there's an issue, especially in those days where that was their lights, that you can't tell that it's for Shabbos. And that's why we said there's a mitzvah to be makabel Shabbos while you're lighting neiros. So there's a similar thing with food. If you set the table Friday afternoon, maybe you're having a wonderful Friday afternoon meal, or maybe you set it up for the Purim Suda. Like, who said that this is about Shabbos? So we cover the main food, the lechem, and then we uncover it in honor of the Friday night meal. It's like the great reveal that this is the purpose of this table. And you have to understand that the way it came about was in the times of Chazal. It's very, very interesting, and it's negate some Hilchos Pesach stuff also. In the time of Chazal, there was no big dining room table. There was no such a thing. They used to lean, as you know, and each person in Roman times, that's the way it was, each person had their own little table. Like, there are times in the Seder that we move the ka'ara away. Some people take it off the table or move it to the side. That comes from a halacha moving the table away. They used to move the table away so that they could focus on the Haggadah. But nowadays, our tables are too big. We can't just move the table away. So we're misalkin as haka'ara. We move the ka'ara away. It's interesting that even in Hilchos Shabbos, the Pais can bring that you shouldn't bring the table out. Again, they're bringing out the table. So you shouldn't bring the table out until Shabbos, because or else it looks like you're preparing it for a Friday meal. And then the Mefarshim say, 1 second, but don't we need the good malach to make the brach, to say he found the table set? So the Mefarshim answer, yeah, set it in the kitchen and bring it out later. It's set, the malachim see it, and then you bring it out in honor of the meal. So then the Mefarshim say, okay, that was good for those days, but by the time the Rishonim came around, they were using tables like we have. So what are we supposed to do? Put our dining room table in the kitchen and set it? What are we supposed to do? Oh, you know what to do? Cover the chalas. Cover the chalas. That way the table is set, but it still shows it's not for now. Fascinating thing, just interesting. I once read, just an interesting little tidbit. I once read, we call, do you know that we call food board? Right? Room and board. What's board? What's board? You giving a board?
Meat boards.
So they, I once read in a book that because they didn't have room in those days, and in Eretz Yisrael you could imagine this type of thing taking place. The way their first, in many societies, the first dining room tables weren't a table. There was hanging on the wall. There was a big board, and it was time to eat. They would take the board off the wall and they would put it on everyone's knees, and that was the board. They ate on the board.
Everyone has to be very steady.
Yeah.
Especially with soup.
My kids would be like Zmiris would get very Lebedik,
Exactly. They have to be at the table. Everyone's necessary.
Yeah. Imagine the Purim Suda.
Brilliant. We should do that, and everyone has to.
Maybe sometimes kids have to be like that.
That's what happened, by the way. There was a kid like Simcha that wanted to leave the table and knew how to do work. And he was just like, I have a great idea. This is a beam. I'm going to put it under.
Can I ask a question? Somebody was once telling me that the halacha is not to set the table like early on.
ask this. My grandparents
Oh, yeah?
they don't set the table till.
So my brother was telling me, it's a thing today that we set the table early, like
Yeah.
Tuesday or whatever. But Gilly said the halacha is not to do it till Shabbos. So I'm wondering if this is where it comes from.
Probably.
So is it better not to set it
Probably.
before Shabbos?
It's hard to say. And when we did the halachas of Erev Shabbos, I kind of danced around those halachas on purpose. The reason I did that is because, like, for example, I'm even a little afraid that my wife is here. Okay, the reason for that is because she works on Friday. If she can't make Shabbos on Thursday night, she's going to give me a choice, Shabbos or my job. Those are the two choices. You can't do both. So, but in the Paiskim it says it's better to get ready for Shabbos on Friday, not on Thursday night, for that
But
reason.
isn't there something about before chatzos on Friday, or that's just showering?
Yeah, that's
Not-
those
not
hachanas.
everything?
Right? No, that this I'm telling you, this is what I just told you is a taisus that describes this issue that we want the table to be set for Shabbos, not before Shabbos. So there is something
what's
to
the
it.
best
Something
thing?
about having your table look nice, even like Friday night for Shabbos day, there are halachas about setting the table Friday night for Shabbos day.
Yeah, that's a different thing. That's a
That's
different thing
on
because
Sabbath.
that's all in honor of Shabbos. The idea of that is that
So
we
why
want
on
to
Friday
show
can't it be in honor of Shabbos?
because you can't tell that it's in honor of Shabbos. You could tell because when else do I do this? But
It's never set with a nice tablecloth. It's never set
Isn't
nice
there also a
tablecloth.
thing?
That's
to
in
put
your
a white
house.
Tablecloth on for Shabbos.
Well,
Write down
there
somewhere
is,
to put a white
yeah.
tablecloth on for Shabbos.
I don't know. There's probably something about white, but
Or even a
again,
tablecloth.
but all these things in the Paiskim did not allow themselves to get caught up in that type of minutia because some families will be different. And maybe there's some European family that always has a silk tablecloth on. You're like, You can't say, "Oh, don't worry about it. We have a table." You know what I mean? Like they made a rule: try to get ready for Shabbos as close to Shabbos. Not everything, but try to do like the covered Shabbos things as close to Shabbos as possible. I didn't say it that way for a very simple reason, because we have to, and the poskim speak this out. I mean, when I talk about my wife working on Friday, I'm joking around that I don't want it to be. Of course, I do. But the point is that the poskim say in the times of Shulchan Aruch and before that, the mommy was not out doing speech therapy on autistic children for the city of Waterbury. She was home.
Well, my father always at the table on Thursday night, but he also works on Friday, and so does my mother.
There's also a concept that like you're supposed to prepare for Shabbos also.
Yeah, but the overt setting up the house is as close to Shabbos as possible. The time that's set in the Shulchan Aruch is Friday morning. And the reason it says Friday morning is because there's a pasuk that says V'haya b'yayim hashishi v'heichinu es asher yaviyu, by the parsha of the man in Parshas B'Shalach. So it says on Friday prepare. So that's why there's an inyan to prepare on Friday. Now, in terms of Friday, to do it earlier in the day versus later in the day, that's just the table. What you're describing. It's just the table because you want to make, and like the neiros, like I mentioned, because you want to make it, when I say the neiros, I don't mean setting up the neiros, I mean lighting them. Because you want to make it really obvious that that's for Shabbos. Okay. But many of these halachas, we have to deal with the reality of 2026. Chas v'shalom, halacha doesn't change. But our realities change, and that's why you have to go back to the poskim and digest the yesodos of the poskim in light of our realities. If I had come home and I learned 20 years ago and told my wife, that's all, you have to get ready for Shabbos on Friday,
So that's my
it's
mom.
not possible.
That's my mom. Yeah, in the book, only gets ready on Friday.
Yeah, she has the longest Friday in history.
So if I had the choice, it's better to do, if I had the ability to do it on Friday, it's better to do it on Friday?
Yeah.
So funny, because do you all feel like you were taught to like bring it in earlier and do it
Yeah.
no?
What's starting with the Chatzais project?
Wow.
We're totally ready by Chatzais. Everything,
Yeah.
even the table set.
So that depends on different minhagim. Because we cover the challah, so we solve that issue. So then, there may be people that have a minhag not
Or
to
we
do
don't
that,
put
but
the
that's
challah
not,
out.
you
could just
Or not put out the
finish
challah,
setting
yeah.
the table. You could start but not
Can I
finish.
just ask a question quickly? My grandparents, they're machmer and everything, but their minhag was always, they didn't set the table till after, I think, like the challah and the kiddush was there, but the plates, they wouldn't put out till after kiddush.
I don't know if that's it could be, when it says that the malachim come in to check if the table is set, they're not checking the plates. They're checking that there's a tablecloth and a becher and a challah. That's what they're checking.
Right. It doesn't look like home.
But
Right,
you know why that was
exactly.
their minhag? Like,
Maybe they had
Maybe
wild
they only had one
children.
table.
who would
No,
break
no,
the
no,
plates.
everything was like perfect.
Talking about the great grandparents. Maybe the
Maybe
Okay,
it
okay.
was
Mother
the
always
fish, they didn't mix the fish at meat, so they just put out the fish
true.
plate.
Even the silverware
It's true.
wasn't out, nothing was out. It was all on the side, perfectly on the side. Like
No, but
right
it could
around.
be what Mrs. Vikritsky is saying, that it could be that back in the day, they were doing what their parents did. Back in the day, on a Friday afternoon, when a kid wanted to sit down and eat something,
They
there
only had one
there
table.
wasn't multiple tables to eat on.
Right.
So they wanted for the kashrus and for the covered Shabbos, they didn't want to take out their china
That
until,
would make sense. If we had one table, then yeah, why should I set it? Then where's everyone
Right.
eating on the floor?
yeah.
Like, so
On a board on their knee.
In any event, these are the three reasons. And we have a lot of minhagim that we pull from some of these reasons, like as you pointed out, putting the tablecloth or the cutting board or whatever it is under the challah. That's because of the man, not because of the other reasons. What if a person doesn't have wine? It could happen sometimes. I don't know if you remember the first Shabbos that we lived in America when we moved back from Eretz Yisrael. We came to the Suda Friday night. We were like tired. You see, you don't even have a memory of that Shabbos. We didn't have wine. I made Kiddush on challah.
Really?
Yeah. We just moved back from Eretz Yisrael. It was like, some of you have done it. Like, it's hard to describe a certain level of exhaustion. Like, being drunk on Purim is nothing compared to that level of exhaustion. Okay? And we made Kiddush on challah. Do you have to cover the challah if you're making Kiddush on challah? So then if it's about what?
In Kiddush, do you say Hamotzi Lachem?
Yes.
That's so interesting.
Yes, you say Hamotzi Lachem. And by the way, you hold the challahs just like you hold the becher. You hold the challahs when you do it. What?
You would wash before Kiddush.
And you would wash before Kiddush.
Also, the Yankees
Yeah,
do
I
that.
watch
also.
before
Right.
Kiddush anyway.
That's so interesting.
But every year, they do have a wash before Kiddush.
Oh yeah.
Summer, yeah.
And so covering challah has nothing to do with the brachos? I know the Rebbe said the pasuk, but I always had learned that because you make hamotzi before hagafen, so you cover the challah because otherwise seder habrachos you
Right. That is.
That's the first reason.
That's the first reason.
Oh, okay. 'Cause I said
That
seder
comes. The
habrachos.
Seder habrachos
Okay,
comes from the
that.
pasuk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that if a person is making kiddush on bread, so then they don't need to cover the challah, but because of zecher laman, or because you want to show that it's l'kavod Shabbos, you would cover the challah. That's very, very interesting.
Have to cover a challah that's in the room, but not.
That's another nafkamina. We have a minhag when we can that if there's like when by a simcha, there's like a challah on every seat. It starts to get funny. Everyone tries to start covering.
Napkin.
And I saw you covering challahs last Shabbos. We were by this Shabbaton. My wife was trying to make sure everything was covered. If you are just doing it because of the kavod of the lechem, so it's just the lechem that's by the mekadesh that he would be making the bracha on. If there's lechem on the other side of the room, that's not his lechem. That's not what he's eating. That's what you're eating. It's not what I'm eating. So I can make a bracha on the wine. So,
Even though you're making motzi and the wine.
Yeah, but it does. Yes, that's true. I guess it might be true for that person, but the truth is that no, even though I'm being mitzi you with the wine, but I'm the one who's drinking wine before the hamaitzi. You're just saying amen to be yaitze kiddush,
Even if you're drinking
right?
the grape juice.
That's not a chiv. You could drink the. You could not. You don't have to. I'm just saying you don't. Technically, you don't have to drink the grape juice,
On
but
Friday
we
night, you don't
do.
have to drink the grape juice?
What?
On Friday night, you don't have to drink it either?
You look like this is important.
Because most
Grape
people
juice, but
think
she
you do.
said she learned that you have to drink it on Friday night.
We'll talk. We're gonna get there, Mirza Hashem. We're gonna get there. You're certainly yaitze if you don't. There's a mitzvah too, but you're certainly yaitze if you don't.
I have one who won't drink grape juice and one who won't drink Moscato. So we're never getting all.
Yeah. You have to make kiddush with both hands. Don't do that.
If you make kiddush on challah, then you make motzi on challah?
No, you're done. You did the hamoitzi.
You're done.
Yeah.
All in one.
All in one.
But wait, you're allowed to make kiddush without two challahs on the table? Is that what the Rav said? Because in my house, it's like.
I told you, it's a
in our house,
machlokes.
It's like we do not start kiddush unless
Some
there's a
right.
lechem
So
on
some
the
people are
table.
very makbid on that, and some people are less
I guess my
makbid.
father-in-law was very
Yeah,
makbid on that.
yeah. Some people are very makbid that there has to be challah on the table, and some people are like, oh, there's no challah on the table, so I don't have to worry about the issue of the challahs being covered. There's another issue, there's another question, and many people have this one. Do you cover the challahs when kiddush is over?
Like naturally uncovered. Oh, my husband does. He covers it on when he makes the bracha. He
Right. So
covers
I
it.
grew up, and I think you grew up also. The challahs were not covered by hamoitzi.
Right.
Kiddush was over. The thing came off.
You're mocked.
You look scandalized.
Well, if it's for the Zeichel Aman, how long do you keep it?
So that's an issue the Paiskim talk about. Some say that even if it's Zeicher Laman, you did the Zeicher Laman for a few minutes, but others say that Zeicher Laman, you should make the bracha with the challahs covered. That's what I do, because that's what I saw my Rosh Hashiva do. My father is Michael, that I could take minhagim from my Rosh Hashiva also. My father told me one time, a little bit sadly, when I was an older bacher, like in Shidduchim age, he told me that he feels sad that he doesn't have a Messiah from his Rabbeim about Shabbos. Like Shabbos wasn't such a thing. And I have a very vibrant Messiah from my Rosh Hashiva about Shabbos. I ate Sudas in his house, and I used to walk him home from yeshiva every Shabbos after davening and talk to him about Shabbos. But I understood that what my father was telling me, you take it. So of course I don't do things that my father wouldn't hold of, but I do a little bit more than he does. And it's interesting, is some of the things I started to do, then he started to do also. But
With Mundo, it was out in the fields. That's where the double is.
Yeah.
When they brought it home already. So maybe
right,
that's
it's
why
true.
went
It
to
could be
the
that's the
bracha.
reason for those that say, now you could hear really both sides, but it could be that this is my time to commemorate that. There's a fascinating question. I know I brought it up last time. It's a fascinating question. It's also not so relevant lamaisa, but it could be, like if you're stuck in a hospital or something, this could come up. Are you allowed to have a clear covering for the challahs?
Like the plastic bag.
Well, the mummy
Yeah.
was covered by dew.
Right. That's
So
clear.
some say the mun was covered by dew. Obviously, it was. So first of all, it could be that only helps if it's zecher lemun. But if you're doing it for the grape juice, it could be the challah could still see. Is that called covered?
eyes.
Or emotions?
No, or we had by Kiddush, if there's cookies in a clear container, we always cover them more.
We do.
Yeah.
Cover them with a
We
napkin
do.
also.
Yeah.
It's for you that you could see it. It's not
Right,
for the challah.
exactly, because the kedima is because of that, right? The kedima is that you have two things in front of you. Perhaps if it's, I'm not telling you an absolute psak, because this is a little bit of a discussion, but perhaps if it's in a see-through bag, in terms of my having to pick the thing that's most chashuv, I see both. But what's fascinating is that there's a Rashi in Parshas B'Shalach when it describes the man, that Rashi says, based on the pasuk, that they couldn't see the man when it was covered with towel.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
it's
maybe
very
because
clear
the mun
from
was
Rashi.
clear.
It could be because the mun was
So
clear and the
blend
towel
in.
was clear, but that you don't have a raya from the fact that it was covered with towel. That obviously they were able to see it because they weren't. When the towel evaporated, then they were like, "Oh look, there's mun." That's what Rashi
Still
says.
there.
We're impressing when you find
don't
an answer to
remember
that.
that.
It wasn't
What?
clear nothing till how many years?
Yeah, but it's discussed now.
Maybe
You know,
ask Claria, haven't you?
Rabbi,
No,
Rabbi.
no, like
there was no
Zechuchas
plastic.
or-
Yeah, zechuchas. There's
There was
glass, right?
There was glass.
Even glass was not clear.
Okay.
There's glass was smoky. There was the very, 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 very wealthy people. This is one of the examples. You know, people talk about this, that we live today in a world where in our very, very limited budgets and we're stressed out for money and everything, we live with a malchus that the biggest kings in the world did not have. You buy for $3 a glass, so $1 you could buy a glass, and the kings would have a glass like that. That's it. Clear glass? There's no such a thing. You know, and the same thing about our plumbing and our hot water available at any time, and so many things that we have. They're absolute malchus. But so they didn't have that clear either. But the recent poskim do talk about the clear covering. It's interesting. Okay, let's talk about the kais a little bit. Obviously, part of the pasuk that we said in the shira of Zeh Keli Ve'anveyu is to do mitzvahs in a way that makes the mitzvahs beautiful. You know, and you do this, by the way, when you serve beautiful sudas. You know, when you make food that looks nice and presentable, it's taking a mitzvah and making it beautiful. But one of the things that are part of Zekei Livan Veu is that when we're doing a mitzvah to do it, that's why it's not just that it's not shticky. It's really a thing. Like the challah knife should be pretty, and the challah board should be pretty, and the becher should be pretty. Like these things are important yesaidos because it's the way that we show Hashem that we're not just doing the mitzvahs because you commanded us and we resent it, but we love it and we want to make it beautiful. It's a tremendous act of like chasidus to go the extra mile to do mitzvahs with a sense of trying to make the mitzvahs beautiful. And a kais, a becher, is very important that it be pretty. But lemaisa, if you don't have a pretty kais, also you imagine you're in a hospital or a hotel or you went away or you're on vacation and things like that, you might not have the prettiest kais, but you still need to have a functional kais. And that means that it's not cracked. If a kais is cracked, it's not good. Now the thing is interesting, if you have a kais, okay, so this is a cup, thank you by the way. This is a kais and it doesn't have a holder, right? It doesn't have, what's it called?
Stem.
A stem. It doesn't have a stem. Okay, a lot of our cups don't have stems. But if it would have a stem, the stem also should be intact. Even though you're not really drinking from that part of it, is that really part of the kais? Yes, it's part of the mitzvah, and you don't want it to be cracked. What's interesting, and this is something that is important to keep in mind, because this will come up at times that you will not be able to ask a shaila, because this will come up during the crazy times. If you have a kais that can't stand, like the only way to use it is to hold it. You know, it'll
Like
fall
those
over.
triangle cups?
Yeah, like it'll fall over if you try to, if you put it down. There is tzdadim. There are some poskim who say it's called making kiddush without a kais, because a kais means a place that you could put wine. You can't put wine in there. So the fact that you could do it because you can't put it down, it can't hold yayin. So so there's some at least suggest the possibility that it's not a question of doing the mitzvah in a beautiful way. It's a question of doing the mitzvah. It's really important. So if the stem is cracked, lechatchila, you should try to get one that's not cracked. But if it's cracked so much that the kais can't stand, then make sure to get another kais.
But does that override the preference in materials, because like I remember my husband telling me at one point, like glass is not considered like chashuv or a nice
So
material.
there is a hierarchy of materials, and the nicer material is better. And silver is certainly considered in the Paiskim to be more mehuder. But certainly, if you have a choice between a cracked silver becher or a glass that's intact, the glass is more important. There are some people that hold that if you love the glass more, that's more mehuder. Like my father at some point got a lucite menorah. He loved it. It was stylish. It was different. Whatever. He loved it, and he used it, not his silver menorah, because to him that was a hider mitzvah. Some people say that there's like an objective hierarchy, and some people say the thing that excites you and that you find beautiful, that's what you should use. Okay. Now, there's this actually came up last Shabbos and this Shabbos, washing the kais. So there's a mitzvah to wash the kais. It says, Hadacha mi bifnim ushtifa mi bachotz. Hadacha and shtifa are two words that mean rinsing. However, hadacha is a stronger word than shtifa. So that means that you wash it very well on the inside. It's logical. Wash it very well on the inside and also wash it on the outside.
Right away.
Before Kiddush.
Oh, I was
Right.
thinking after.
No, before Kiddush. The idea is that yes, the and shtifa is with the test. The main idea here is that the kais should be clean, and therefore there are poskim that say my father always did this. He was like, we wash the dishes after Shabbos, we put it away clean, we take it out clean, it's clean. I don't have to wash it again before Kiddush. And there are many poskim that hold that way. Some people say check it anyway. Today I was using a kais. Just a lot of people had used it or whatever, it was washed. But I noticed when I picked it up, I noticed that there was some last night's dessert was a drop on the outside of it. It was like chocolate on the outside of it, like a drop. I gave it to my wife to wash, and I wouldn't have done it because I don't really care if there's a little chocolate on the outside of it. But because of this halacha, I did it. That clearly the halacha wants that the inside and outside should be clean. So that's why we did it. It was interesting that last Shabbos I had this Shabbaton in Yerushalayim, and I had this chus to spend it with Rabbi Sachs, who's Talmud Chacham on another level, hard to imagine that level of Talmud Chacham. And he came to Kiddush, and there was a kais there, and it obviously hadn't been washed. It was clean, but it hadn't been washed. And he called over a boy. He said, please wash it on the inside. And I just heard him like saying low to the boy, please wash it on the inside and the outside. That was his shtifa, his hadacha and shtifa. And they say that even though for us in our society, bichlal, we assume if we take a kais out of the cabinet, it's clean. But there are paiskim that say that there's a Kabbalistic element here. I don't know what it is, but of washing the kais before Kiddush.
What does that have to do with hagam?
Is there a thing not to dry the inside?
Mayim and
There's something about the
yayin.
yayin mixing with it.
Yeah,
something
not
about
Dry the inside,
yeah,
right? You could
yeah.
dry the outside.
Yeah, it has to be. I thought that it had to be wet because that way, if the yayin in the glass was pugum and
I
we
don't know.
pour it in.
The halachas of pagam are not affected by that, but there's something beyond that.
Okay.
There's a whole world here that we don't know
Supposed
about
to
what's
be
going
water
on.
in it.
Supposed
Why?
to be wet, that's what
I don't know, that's what
Yeah,
we
I've
know.
been
Okay.
told many times not to
Okay.
dry the
But I
inside.
have other
Every time
questions
you ask why,
about
I'm like, I don't know,
this
it
with
just
the
doesn't
dessert on the
do
outside of the
it.
coast because we always see by Pesach, but it's not a problem for like the coast. Doesn't need real hagala because it doesn't really get anything on it. But if it got dessert on it,
I hear what you're saying.
I have a problem. I
Right.
think about it every
But
week.
the dessert wasn't hot.
I know, but it
Actually,
sat on
yes.
it for a while.
But it wasn't hot when it got onto the becher.
It
But
was
it sat there for like
if it
many
goes
hours.
in the dishwasher with all the chametz dishes.
Was switching Hilchos Pesach?
Sorry.
We do have go on.
Somebody came over to me
We do
today.
have Hagala on Becher
Someone in the
that
community
says,
asked me
listen,
today, what was the question that he asked me? He's going away for Yontif. He wanted to know if the way I sell chametz, his cleaning lady could clean the house while he's gone on Pesach.
On pizza?
On Chol Hamoed,
Yeah,
whatever.
Chol Hamoed.
What
She's
does
coming
that mean?
anyway. she's getting paid the whole week of Pesach anyway.
She comes every Tuesday, let's
Yeah,
say.
so what is, what's the problem with her?
If I
keeping
sold
it?
the house, then he's letting her into.
Oh.
You're selling the hummus.
So the way I do it is that I sell the chametz, not the house. There are some people that do sell the house, but the my mechira doesn't do it that way. So I told him it's okay, but I told him you are officially my first Pesach Shaila.
Really?
I
Yeah,
got the second.
and
I'm surprised.
yeah, and it's interesting because Chazal say that we start Shayalim, we start asking about Pesach 30 days before Pesach, which is, when is that first day? On Purim. It says in Shulchan Aruch, it says, Umaschilim b'yoyim hapurim atzvay. We start on Purim, which I never got a Hilchos Pesach Shaila on Purim, but my father always sits down to learn Hilchos Pesach on Purim. I'm glad that he has time for that.
I wonder if last time this year.
Yeah, but so anyways, yeah, so I always advise kashering anyway. I try on the ladies chat. We'll have to discuss if we should do that this year, but we should do it. I try on the ladies chat to differentiate, because this is something that's very, very important to me, that women understand, men also, but like I have a little bit of an expectation that a man should take out a Mishnah Berurah and figure it out, but there's a certain level of knowing halacha that's necessary, because if not, we end up being very makbid about things that are not so important, and being very not makbid about things that are important. And this is an area we were talking about this on Shabbos, and this comes up a lot for me when I deal with people that are struggling with things and so on. People don't know, like someone's stressed, he's struggling, she's struggling, whatever it is, and the full everything with the chumrah that they're not holding by doing. So they're rolling it back a little bit. We wish it wouldn't be that way, but some people need to roll it back a little bit. But if they're amaratzim, they don't know what to roll back, and they end up rolling back the wrong things. You know, I find this with tznius a lot, because there are halachas of tznius, and then there are hanhagos and minhagim of tznius. And we want everyone to be as tzanua as they're able to be on their level. But there are certain things that are halachas, and there are certain things that are minhagim. And when we teach girls, just the whole thing dumped on their head at the same time, so then, if they're getting older and they're struggling with something, or their husband doesn't like something, or whatever it is, they don't know which thing is just like their seminary teacher thought it was a good idea, and which thing is in Shulchan Aruch as an absolute halacha that you're not allowed to violate. And it's important to know the difference. I think I once gave a share about it, but maybe it's something we could keep in mind to do. Like, it's very important to know these things. And when it comes to Hilchos Shabbos and Hilchos Pesach, the same thing is true. So when it comes to the Bechers, I still maintain that May Ikar Hadin, that you do not need to kasher them. But I advise kashering them, even if we got Dubai chocolate on them. But I still will advise to kasher them. And you know from the chat that many times I'll write on the chat, it's better to get new ones. It's better to have Pesach towels. It's better to get new pacifiers. It's better to do those things. But I'll never write you have to, because I want someone, you know, and also like I'm writing on a chat to how many women, sometimes 100, 150 women on it, and everyone's holding in a different place and dealing with different levels of stress and what she's able to handle. And I try to make it very, even in these halachas, to know what's the Ikar Adin, what's not the Ikar Adin. It's very, very important. You know, based on what we learned, like I'm telling you, you're in a hospital, Mirz Hashem for Simchas, you're in a hospital for Shabbos, okay? When it comes to Friday night Kiddush, you know this because we've learned it together, you have to hear Kiddush. If you don't hear it Friday night, as we learned last time, hear it by Shabbos day.
We don't have to rinse out the plastic cup that you use.
But if you can't rinse out the plastic cup, yeah. So don't rinse out the plastic cup. You know, to have a sense of the halachas. That's really one of the main things that we're accomplishing, is to have a sense. A lot of the things we're talking about in Kiddush, like, you know a lot of the things. But just to have it, like this difference, like if it's cracked, it's better to get a new one. But if it can't stand, you have to get a new one. That's the type of thing it's good to know, because sometimes we have to say, it's cracked, but this is what I have. Or what happens when you go to someone else for Shabbos and they're using a cracked kais?
Well, what are you supposed to do? if you're in someone else's table.
Right,
so
so
you
if
can't
they're not
okay.
Yaitse Kiddush, if they're not Yaitse Kiddush, you have to
At home,
figure,
do it yourself.
even if it's uncomfortable, you have to figure it out, yeah. But if you are, we had this shaila, I don't know if I mentioned it, we had this shaila about what to do. It came up in a very dramatic way. Tell me if I mentioned this to you recently, but we had this shaila, if you buy Kiddush and the person who's making Kiddush is not from.
Oh, I don't think we talked about it.
We didn't talk about that?
How
I
does
had,
it aid us?
what? Yeah, I had this shaila many years ago. There was someone in the community, a woman came to me and she told me her husband said he doesn't believe in Hashem. I was like, he comes to shul every Shabbos. What do you mean he doesn't believe in Hashem? He's like, yeah, he feels like culturally for his children it's the right thing to keep doing, but he does not believe in it. He believes in evolution. He does not believe in God.
He's sure about it.
He's sure about it. That's what she said. So at that time, Rav Bick was coming to Waterbury to do a get of one of our older members, and so he came in because the woman was from, but her husband was not from, and we didn't think we'd be able to convince the husband to go to Brooklyn for the get. And Rav Bick, who was very, very nice of him, he was the one he's very involved with the mikveh also. He came to see the mikveh. He came to do the get. He's an expert on gittin, and he came to do the get. So while he was here, I told that woman she should come ask him the shayla. And she came in. It was in my old office there. Remember that big office there? Remember that? And I miss it. And but anyway, she came in. She asked him if she's Yaitse Kiddush when her husband makes Kiddush. So he said, I don't understand. If he's not religious, why does he make Kiddush? She said, no, he does all the mitzvahs. Because he does all the mitzvahs and he doesn't believe in Hashem. She said, yeah, he doesn't eat treif. He doesn't. No, he does everything. He wants to be authentic. He says he's doing everything from, but he's doing it just for cultural reasons. He doesn't believe. So Rav Bick said, there's no such a thing. Yaitse Kiddush. He's from.
Really?
I don't believe it.
Wow.
But it always lingered in my mind, because first of all, I knew the guy, Rav Bick didn't. And I was pretty sure that he was sure. He was sure. And second of all,
Nobody does in private.
and second of all, what happens when it's someone that you know, for sure, like someone who's not? Let's say what happens. Let's say you have a relative, or a friend who, from wherever. We've all been around. We have, Yidden have been in all situations, and you have a friend or a relative who's talking not from, and you go for Shabbos, and they're going to make Kiddush. They might see you with Kiddush. You're not Yaitse. It's a problem. Someone not religious makes Kiddush, you're not Yaitse. But then someone pointed out to me, someone else in the community, when I brought this up, I once spoke about this on Friday night a few weeks ago, just as a Dvar Halacha, and somebody told me that he has a very interesting shaila. He goes to his parents for Shabbos every few months. His father doesn't pronounce Hebrew well. The words don't come out. It's not the words of Kiddush. It comes out as a jumble. So he's listening. His father picks up a becher with a kais. His father believes in Hashem. His father's a Talmud of big Talmidei Chachamim. He doesn't say the words right. This guy, what am I supposed to do? So he pulls the whole shtick by his father's house that he likes to be Kiddush himself. He does the whole thing. But really it's because he doesn't think he's Yaitse. But I did come up with a plan for him. It's such a good, simple plan to know. Just whisper Kiddush. Even if you're not the one holding the becher, if you say Kiddush and someone is holding a becher, you're Yaitse Kiddush. So you could say it along. Whisper it along with them. It's good to know. This could come up.
Sometimes people jumble. I've heard many people say Kiddush so fast that you don't even know what you heard.
You just have to know if they're saying it so fast or if it's really jumbled.
How do I know? I can't hear.
I remember years ago when we were discussing the Megillah, the Rav said that if your level of Hebrew understanding is like, you're telling me you're saying the story of Purim, I'll take your word for it, that you're saying that,
Yeah, you're Yaitse the Megillah and Kiddush that way. Yeah. Okay, we have a few more minutes. Let's talk about Pagum. You brought up Pagum. Let's talk about Pagum. There's such a thing that you cannot make Kiddush on a kais Pagum. Pagum means, good translation of Pagum? Like, what? Defective. That's a good word. Very good. Okay, a cup of wine or grape juice that's defective. What does that mean? What that means is only one thing. It just means one thing, that somebody drank from it. Even if it was a tiny sip, and even if it's still full, you cannot make Kiddush on a kais pagum that somebody drank from. So, like for example, somebody made Kiddush and drank from a kais, or tasted from it, and then somebody else wants to make Kiddush on it, they can't do that. Okay?
And the grape juice from the bottle also, somebody drank from the bottle?
Yeah, if somebody drank from the bottle. We don't assume that someone drank from the bottle, but,
To fix it.
you know.
You can fix it, I know, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that that's how people pour water.
So the thing is that just pouring it into another kais, for example, doesn't fix it. But adding some wine, even just a little bit, fixes it. Not only that, even adding some water fixes it. Because it makes it shalem again. Okay? But you don't have to worry.
What do you mean pouring into another cup? Let's say you make Kiddush and you drink half of it.
Yeah.
And
If I
then-
pour it into another cup, it's still pago in the other
No,
cup.
then I want to make Kiddush on using a smaller amount of.
You can't do that.
You pour from yours.
You can't make
You have
kiddush.
to add.
You have to add.
That.
Now, there is such a thing as pouring back into the bottle. There is a tvila issue, by the way. That's the plastic bottle. According to some, Rabbi Sonnenschein says it's not a problem, but some people, we're makbid about it, and we buy a glass bottle, so it's full, you're allowed to use it, but to pour stuff into it could be an issue of tvilas kalim. Right? You have to table kalim. Interesting, right? Like putting pickles back into the pickle jar could be problematic. And maybe the wines that we have are made by Yidden, the bottle, I don't know. But,
My
you know.
grandfather always says that things that are meant to be thrown out, you're making it a keli.
Yeah, so there are shittas like that. Rav Moshe holds that way. My father's Rav disagreed with Rav Moshe on that. Rav Moshe's Kiddush is based on a Mishnah somewhere. It's a Kiddush, and he didn't hold that way. There are solutions. This idea, like you're putting horseradish back into the jar, you're putting pickles back into the jar, that it could be the jar needs to be teifled. How could you do that? Using it needs to be teifled. Most people rely on Rav Moshe and do it. Don't get panicked about it. My father's Rav had a solution, and I kind of just like have that in mind on everything that we do, that when we buy pickles in a pickle jar, you're going to have a hard time with this, but bear with me here, okay? That when we buy, I don't know, it's interesting tonight, no? When we buy pickles from a pickle jar, what? Purim, Pesach, yeah.
We're good.
When you buy pickles you're buying a jar of pickles, have in mind that you're not buying the jar. You're not buying the jar. You're just buying the pickles. The jar is just holding the pickles. I'm not buying the jar.
What if it's plastic? You don't have to
That's
wear
fine.
it.
That's
Right,
not
so
fine.
then it's the same way it could be glass. It could be plastic. So you really are not buying the jar. You
Right.
just- you don't
You're
care
not
what-
buying the jar. I'm not buying the jar. I bought it in Target. Target owns the jar. I bought it at Stop and Shop. Stop and Shop owns the jar. I didn't buy the jar.
What?
Right.
Can you just clarify with the wine? So when I make Kiddush this morning, so I'll make Kiddush on grape juice,
Mhm.
I'll pour it into another cup and drink, and then I'll pour the extra back in the jar, into the bottle.
That's fine.
That's fine?
When there's grape juice in the bottle, even if you drank and poured it into the bottle, I'm not talking about the hygiene of it, but if you do that, that's still fine, because it does make it better again if it goes back into a bottle where there is other wine or grape juice.
Okay.
That's okay. That you could do. Okay? Okay. A Kiddush cup needs to have a revius. Needs to be able to hold a revius. A revius, when it comes to Kiddush, is different shiurim, but let's try to get over 5 ounces. Okay? 5.1 ounces. Over 5 ounces.
That's not the same as.
Okay?
Not the same.
Arbakaisis is smaller.
Much smaller.
Arbakaisis is smaller. Arbakaisis is Durabanan, and Kiddush on Shabbos is Dairaisa. In fact, I don't know how many of you have done Hilchos Pesach with me, but when the Seder is on Shabbos, I always say to be more machmer on the first kais, because Kiddush on Yontif is Durabanan, but Kiddush on Shabbos is Dairaisa.
Both Friday night and Shabbos day, or just Friday night?
Just Friday night. Just
Is
Friday
that why
night.
people won't make Kiddush on Shabbos Friday night? They'll do Shabbos morning?
Yes. Okay, so there's a din of doing a revius. Now, it's just important to know, the minimum size is a revius. If you have a kais that's 2 reviuses, we saw some kaises, we were looking for kaises in Eretz Yisrael, we saw like massive kaises. We didn't buy one that we really wanted, because it was just impossible. We couldn't imagine someone drinking Rav kais of that thing.
You still
Right?
have to drink the road coat.
So the thing is like this, before we get to how much to drink, which I don't think we'll get to this week, let me just talk about what the kais that you're using. If the kais holds a revius, you fill it up and you have a revius of wine. If the kais holds 2 reviuses, you still want to fill up the kais. There's two dinim that you're trying to do, a revius and a kais male. There's a kavod and a full kais. Now, what happens if you only have a less wine? You have a revius, but there's more cup left, and you don't have more wine. So you could add a little water, but you can't. You have to be careful how much water to add, because if it gets too diluted, it's not wine anymore. And our wines are already diluted, so you could add a little bit of water. You could add other things that move the wine up. And the thing that makes the most sense in our world, in Shulchan Aruch talks about adding challah.
Marbles?
Don't
Or
try
what?
that.
Like-
Okay?
Marbles, but
But
I'm
don't do marbles, please. Please don't do marbles. Ice cubes. Ice cubes. If your grape juice or wine is not hitting the top, you could put in ice cubes. Make Kiddush fairly soon before they melt. Make Kiddush, but the ice cubes will lift the wine, and you could use that. It's very what? It displaces. Yeah. So it's a good idea to do it. Now I want to tell you, if you are stuck somewhere where you have a kais and you have a revius of wine, and it just doesn't fill the kais, and there's nothing for you to do. You don't have water. You can't put. If you put in water, it'll just dilute it too much. You don't have ice. There's nothing for you to do. You could still make kiddush. This is a good example of what I'm talking about. That's where mahader. We do a hider l'chatchila, that we want the kais to be a kais male. If the kais doesn't have a revius, that's a problem. But if the kais has a revius, it just didn't get to the top, I could still make kiddush.
Are you allowed to keep it a drop lower if you just don't want to spill it?
A drop lower, you could do. That's still called a kais male, but you still have to be careful. Like
It can't be
not
like
a ton.
half an inch. It has
Right,
to be like...
exactly.
Did you hear the lady in the Becher store? She was saying, if it's too big, so you just don't fill it up.
Yeah. I didn't think it was a good time to start giving her a share, so I left it alone. But
If you're stuck somewhere, if you're stuck and you don't have what, then it's not okay.
what?
You don't have enough to fill up the whole becher, even if you have a revius.
Then it's
But
okay.
if you don't have reviews, then what?
It's not
If you don't have a revius, then it's a problem.
Then what do you do?
Add water.
Make a kiddush on challah.
Oh, make it. It wasn't
it's
a
better to do
kosher
that.
alio.
Yeah.
Friday night.
It was a regular coast,
It wasn't
like for
meant to be a
Kiddush.
kosher aliyah.
No, it was a Kiddush cup, and it was too big. I'm like, we can't make Kiddush on that. It's way
Okay, I just one more halacha, and then Mirza Hashem will next time. We have to figure out what we're doing with this year. We're changing the clock next week.
Right? Yeah.
so fast to change.
Next month is Shabbos. It's changing next month is Shabbos.
Okay,
There's
Mrs.
no
Hollander
obvious-
and I will have to be in touch during the week and figure out what we're doing with this year.
There's no promise about him, so maybe till it gets really late, we could do a few more. I don't have to see.
We'll see. We'll have to see.
Or
Or
Shabbos,
Shabbos.
yeah. After Chatzai, so we're all
We'll see.
set.
I'm sad that we're stopping the Friday night learning. That's that Friday night learning with the boys is like something else. In any event, just the next time that we learn, I want to do just breaking down Kiddush. What are we doing? Vayichulu, the thing, just breaking it down. It's not that much more. And then about who was asking about if you have to sip the wine, how much wine do you have to sip, how much wine do you have to drink, and that's all. And then we'll get on to the next thing, maybe the Suda, the dinim of the Suda. At some point, if we continue this, it depends how hard Mrs. Hollander pushes me, but if we continue, later on, at some point, we want to start getting to the malachas, Bayrer, Shehian, Chazara, Bishol, these halachas. But for now, we started off with the mitzvahs aseh of Shabbos, and then we'll touch maybe briefly on the tefillas of Shabbos, and then we'll go to those halachas. But the last two halachas I wanted to say is, first of all, it is true that lahalacha, it is better to use wine over grape juice. It's better. If a person doesn't like wine, if a person's going to get sick from wine, you're allowed to use grape juice. Certainly, there's even a Gemara that says a person can take an eshkail anavim, a person could take a cluster of grapes before Shabbos, squeeze them, and make kiddush on what comes out. So clearly you don't need wine. There is a hiddur, and there is, even though it's not Pesach, there is also a hiddur of red wine. There is a hiddur of red wine. If you have a choice and you like them both, red wine over white wine, if someone loves the white wine so much that it's much more of a geschmack, mitzvah for them, that would be a reason to use white wine. But there is a hiddur of red
What
wine.
about white over grape juice? What grape juice is red?
I think the wine. I think the wine wins, but I have to check that out.
My brother-in-law does that.
Yeah, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Because he
interesting.
likes Bartender for the four gozos, but he wants it to be red. So he
That's
puts
so
it in the
interesting.
grape juice. You put the grape juice first.
Yeah, with the grape juice.
That's so interesting.
That's very interesting. Okay. Thank you very, very much. Okay, we'll have to be in touch about where we go from here.
I think we could still do 8:30 for a few more weeks after the clock changes, no?
Because you know all this about